Hey there, good evening. Nice to see you. Time for the Bronx Buzz. This is Bronx Night's program. We talk to reporters, writers, editors, journalists, people putting stuff out in the borough of the Bronx so you can know what's happening. You can know what they're thinking about. In our second segment, we're going to the Bronx River Art Center for a wonderful exhibit that is really about us in the Bronx. But right now, a somewhat bittersweet segment. Sweet because we're going to say hello to Aliya Schneider once again. Nice to see you, Aliya.
Nice to see you.
But the news is people may know Aliya Schneider has been a reporter and writer and excellent journalist for the Bronx Times, but she has now left and she's gone on to other things. So why don't you briefly tell? We're gonna go into your last story written for the Bronx Times, but tell us a little bit about what you're doing, when you left, and where you're going to be, and what you're going to be doing.
Yeah, so I very recently left the Bronx Times. I joined the politics and governing team at the Philadelphia Inquirer. I just started yesterday, which was Monday, October 23rd.
Right, we're recording this. We should say on the 24th.
Yeah. And so I'm going to be on a team of politics reporters covering kind of general politics in the Philly region, and then also covering the 2024 election across the state of Pennsylvania.
Are you going to be moving out there? Now, you said you hadn't moved yet, but I didn't ask. So you're going to be fully leaving and getting out there?
I will be. I will be. Not yet, but I will be moving there.
All right, she's going to be leaving. We're going to ask you a little bit about the Bronx Times and some of the other things, and then things that you're going to be doing. But let's just talk about the final, the final piece that you wrote for the Bronx Times. The piece was, and it's been written up in a couple of places. Ex-Santos treasurer Nancy Marks has ties to Christy Marmorato's Bronx GOP campaign. This anybody tied to Santos right now is you raise your question marks, but in particular, this particular treasurer is in some trouble as well. So why don't you kind of recast the story that you wrote for the final one for the Bronx Times?
So I will say that I technically do have another article that will be coming out that hasn't come out yet.
So it's not fully the last one. All right.
The last one, but the last one right now. But yeah, so Nancy Marks was a treasurer for George Santos, and she fairly recently pled guilty to charges related to the campaign and kind of fraud. And so she admitted to kind of creating fake contributions, using people's names without their permission, and also creating a fake loan, which she said she did with George Santos. And then shortly after she was indicted, Santos was given, I think, 10 more charges that.
Yeah, partially based on, we don't have to review George Santos' legal issues. But as I understand it, she faces like real jail time for this. I mean, potentially, up to 4 years.
Yeah, I mean, I had the specific number in the article for what the plea deal said,
Right.
but yeah, it's serious stuff, and this is specifically relating to her work on George Santos's campaign, and so kind of how that relates to the Bronx is that she worked on Christy Marmorato's campaign pretty early on, and Christy is the GOP nominee for the general
Right.
election this
And
year.
and I should mention on our, program, Bronx Talk, beginning Tuesday the 31st, you'll be able to see the debate between, Christy Marmorato and, the Democrat incumbent, Marjorie Velasquez. That's just a free plug for me.
And that's in City Council District 13.
13, of course, in the East Bronx. Yeah.
But something worth noting is that Nancy Marks also worked on the campaign of George Havronic, who was the main GOP challenger in the primary to Christie. And so they both told me that their time with her was pretty short lived for different reasons. And that is supported by documentation. She was on their campaigns only for the early parts. But I
Right.
thought it was a little interesting that she was working on both of their campaigns at the same time when they were primary opponents.
Yeah, so, even aside from any fraud or any other allegations, that in itself is interesting, let's put it that way. Imagine somebody, working on 2 campaigns of competing candidates, that being the treasurer, what information goes back, it just seems, I hate to say it, it's very George Santos-like.
Yeah, I heard mixed things about that in terms of what people thought of that. Mike Randino, who's the head of he's a chair of the Bronx
Right.
GOP and also happens to be Christy Marmorato's brother. He told me that Nancy was really the go-to treasurer for the GOP candidates in the area, and that anytime someone would ask Mike for a recommendation for a treasurer, he would recommend her. And George Havranek told me that um, that Mike referred uh, Nancy
To
or
him.
yes, to
Yeah, it's just very strange, that's all, and maybe she's gonna be taking the fall for some. I mean, I don't know. We certainly are not in a position to judge, but it especially going into, what is a competitive campaign and will be a competitive election day for the 2 of them, for Marjorie and for Christie. It is, I don't know. It just doesn't sit right. It's not the way things should go because, her who knows how far those tentacles go. It's a little bit odd. You know what I mean?
yeah,
It just
I mean, and so the 2 candidates had different reasons actually that they gave me for why they dropped her as their treasurer. For George, it was when he found out that Nancy was working for Christie, he
yeah,
didn't like
yeah, of course.
her
That's
working on
totally
any
crazy.
campaign. And for Christie, she told me it was once she started seeing Nancy in the news, kind of getting into this scandal with George Santos and getting her family members were getting phone calls from reporters asking about her connection. That's when she knew, okay, I want to cut ties
Time
with
to go.
they actually the different reasons.
Listen, you have just been a great reporter. This is just one example of the many things you've covered. What's it been like? First of all, how long have you been at? Or were you at the Bronx Times? And what was it like? What's your? We were going to give you a chance to do your like little Bronx farewell, so to speak.
Yeah, so I was on staff for about 2 years. I started as a contributor in the summer of 2021, and then I joined full time at the very beginning of November 2021, right when election night, if not my first night, was one of my first nights. And I started as a digital editor, where I was really
Well,
helping
that's right. Yeah.
everything behind the scenes, but also regularly reporting. And my heart's really in reporting. As great of an experience it was helping with everything and learning about everything.
Right.
So I switched into a full-time reporter role a little later on,
Mhm.
what I was doing when I
But
left.
listen, the one thing that, we have to credit you with, your work, everything you wrote about was thorough, and you really I know that you take it very seriously, and you really, whether it's investigative or, just something maybe a little simpler, you really, gave us everything that was out there, and I will tell you, I appreciated all of that. And how do you look back at, your work in the Bronx? I mean, I'm going to guess what the best, craziest story that you did, but before we do that, just give us a little bit about covering the Bronx. What's it like to cover the Bronx?
I mean, it was an amazing experience. I got to cover so many different things and speak to so many different people and just covering the whole borough with a small team. We all got to do so many different stories, whether it was a Legionnaires outbreak or local politics or reporting on the ferry, and just so many different things. I mean, I can go on and on and on. And so I really got to just learn about so many different things, and how they impact communities, and how the actions of elected officials and city agencies affect day-to-day people's lives and their day-to-day.
Yeah.
And so now I'm going to be on a politics team, so I'm going to be more focused on one kind of reporting, and that's a great experience in itself. And I really found my love for politics reporting through the Bronx
Through the
Times.
Bronx. I don't know if that's good news or bad news for the Bronx, but yeah, at least there was something that you could report on. I want to ask you about the Bruckner rezoning. To me, that and then all the things that happened with that, and of course, we're going to have to bring that up, I'm sure, in the debate between the two candidates. But that to me was maybe the wildest, the busiest, the most difficult story because there was so many passionate angles to it. Do I have that right? Is that maybe the most memorable story of them all? If I'm wrong, you could say it's okay.
It's interesting because if you were to ask me about one story, I wouldn't
You
say
wouldn't have said
Bruckner
that one. That's the one I remember.
because Bruckner was so many different stories, and so it was very
Mm,
incremental. I felt like I countless stories. I wrote countless stories on that rezoning proposal, and so
right.
there wasn't like one Bruckner story I wrote, and I'm like, that's the best thing I did at the Bronx Times. It was really this commitment that we had to covering this from pretty early on, and then once it was in the city council and these other bigger outlets in the city were they kind of swooped in and they were all covering Bruckner, and a lot of these places were linking to our coverage and they were looking to our coverage to really get the details. And I think, as you said, I tend to be pretty thorough. And so I was able to kind of get the kind of microscopic details that these other outlets may not necessarily have had the background to get. So I think the experience on reporting on Bruckner in itself was a really great experience.
Yeah.
But it was this kind of gradual thing over time
So
that shows the value of local reporting.
so before we run out of time, if so, now I will ask you that question. Which was the best story you did, the most interesting story, the one that was most compelling?
So this is a really hard question, and it would
Oh, okay.
like all the time, but because I'm going into a politics beat, the story that comes to mind is when, and I'm going to try to very quickly summarize this, when Miguel Dyer resigned as treasurer, another treasurer story of Bernadette Ferrara's campaign,
Oh.
because it was a very personal story. It had to do with remarks that she said about gay marriage on your
Oh, yes, yes, yes,
and
yes.
Miguel really trusted me with his story, and I mean, there was a lot that we talked about. I mean, it's a
So
semi-long
the
article, but there's
we're gonna run out of time, and as you ran out of time, and listen, Aliya, we hope that maybe we can find a way to bring you back in and tell us about what you're doing. We hope you will continue to stay in touch, and we wish you all good luck. And remember the great people of the Bronx, and be inspired by us in everything that you do.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Great. It's always been a pleasure to have you, and I already miss reading you in the Bronx Times. So there it is. Aliya Schneider, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your great work in the borough of the Bronx. We're going to take a short break, ladies and gents, and then when we come back, we're going right to the Bronx River Art Center, and you're going to love this exhibit. It's about you, and it's about me. It's about the Bronx. We'll be right back.
Hey, boss. Okay.
I said I'm fine.
Put me to bed, see you in the morning. With the frosted Superman, but it wasn't on it. And we lost it.
You can talk to me.
It's been really, really hard for me.
So much.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
So much.
Fostering a pet for a friend or neighbor can keep families together. Learn more at petsandpeopletogether.org.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl. It's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
Okay, back with you on the Bronx Buzz. We thank Aliya Schneider for joining us and wish her good luck in everything that she does. But we move on, of course, in the Bronx. And in our second segment today, we're going to go over to one of the, I think, the best places in the Bronx. It's the Bronx River Art Center. We're going to say hello to curator Jordan Horton. Nice to see you, Jordan. Nice to have you with us.
Nice to see you again as well.
Nice to see you. You just talk to me before we get into the show. Pick me up, put me on. Tell me just a little bit about your background in art and how you went from being not a curator to being a curator of what I think is just a spectacular show.
Sure. So I went to undergrad I graduated in 2019 from DePaul University in art history. And just as I was graduating, I was learning what were art positions that you can take, what were things you could do with this degree, and that just really led my fascination to curating. After that, I went to grad school at Williams College and graduated in 2023, so in June. And while I was there, I was also a Mellon curatorial fellow, so I got the opportunity to work in a museum and work on a curatorial team and lead projects on my own. That it just kind of sparked this fire to continue to curate even without an institution. And so this opportunity from BRAC came up and I jumped onto it.
And there you are, and there we are. Are you an artist on your own? Do you create stuff, or do you just really get the kick out of putting an exhibit together to show people, what others are doing?
Sure. When I was in undergrad, I minored in studio art, and then I minored in studio art. So I always had this artist background. I always loved to draw when I was younger. But I definitely get way more satisfaction of curating and being on the art history side of things. But I think because I was an artist, it makes it easier to work with artists, or I really enjoy working with artists because I understand it to a degree.
Right. And I guess that, when you were talking about that, it relates in a way to me that I get a kick out of showing off to other people,
Yeah.
good people and good things and all the other stuff that we talk about. So I can relate very much to, to the idea of, curating and putting stuff out for people. Talk to me about Pick Me Up, Put Me On. Was the idea created before, like did our buddy Gail Nathan, who's the director over there at the Bronx River Art Center, did she say, I want to do this kind of exhibit? Or did she say, hey, Jordan, come up with something, and what do you got, kind of thing? How
Sure.
did we get to that point?
Sure. So the title really reflects the nature of the show of let me put on my friends to an opportunity. And so I saw the open call for this show, and the only requirement was that the artist had to be from the Bronx. And one of the artists in the show, Oscar Model, was a college roommate of mine, and we started college together in
Ah,
the same scholarship program of Posse, the Posse Foundation. And so I knew Oscar for a long time. He was a studio art major and computer science major. And so we had a lot of classes together. We did a fellowship together. And so, in thinking of the artists that I know from the Bronx, Oscar was the first person I thought of. Estelle, I happened to meet her maybe a week or 2 weeks
this
before
is Estelle Masonette.
Estelle Massonet, yes.
Masonette, okay.
I happened to meet her probably 2 weeks before I saw the open call at her.
Really?
There was open studios at Yale where she went to get her MFA, and that's where I met her. And besides her art being fantastic, the one thing I remembered about her and seeing like 40 people studios is that she was from the Bronx, and
So there was an easy start there. But
yes.
now, did you have to tell tell them, I want pieces that fit into this
Hmm.
strategy and then they created them, or did they already have the work and they
Mhm.
said, well, this one fits, that kind of thing?
Yeah, and thinking about the artist that I was choosing, they are also similar in style in which they use large textile, large figurative, large figurative work. So I honestly just asked them to show me what they had, and they just happened to be so connected and so similar, but still very distinct in their own way that it was just a really beautiful happening.
It just worked.
It just
Um,
worked.
so let's take a look at a couple of pieces. As you know, I was there and
Mhm,
I just fell in love, especially with this first piece that we're going to look at. I just thought this was the cat's meow. So if Anderson
mhm,
can pop it up on the screen, what I just love is the passion between the father and son, and of course, then his face is different. You want to just tell me? So this is one done by who? By Oscar?
no, this is Estelle.
Estelle's work?
If we're looking at the right image, it's with
That's the one,
the
yeah.
Cafe Bustelo, yeah. That's actually the older figure is actually a portrait of Estelle, and she's holding who I believe is her nephew.
Wow.
And so I thought that was a really great self-portrait, very loving, very personal to the artist. Yeah, and
Wow.
it's just called Carino.
Well, one of the things which we're gonna see in a moment or two is, uh, you see it and it looks like a painting, but actually it's actual it's raised, it's actual stuff. It's the clothes and the shoes, and we're gonna see that. Anderson, just put up a couple of the other ones. Like, here's another sample, and what I love about these is that they're just, uh, th they're very Bronx. I don't know how else to
Mm.
say it. They really communicate. Do you wanna say something about, either of these 2 pieces?
Sure, I'll speak on the second one. This is work by Oscars, Camino a la Casa. And once again, what was just super coincidental is that the younger figure in this is Oscar, and he's walking with, he said, either his grandfather or his father in this. And so I thought it was great to have both of the artists portrayed in these works.
Oh, that so
Um,
it's not only even though for me, it's like, "Oh, that's other people," but it really is a personal thing for, the artist.
Absolutely. And just how that is still relatable, even though it's a very personal experience for both of them.
And let there's another this one to me. Let's put this one up. This one displays what because I've got another angle of it, but this is actually like a living room, and it's not like a picture of clothes hanging. It's actually the clothes hanging.
Hmm. Yeah. And so Oscar and Estelle both work in
See,
foundness.
there you can excuse me, there you can see that it's actual stuff up there, even though when you look at it head on, it doesn't look like that. Go ahead, I'm sorry, George.
Yeah, so Oscar and Estelle both work with found objects and really value the practice of collecting. That one of the shirt that's Irish in Oscar's work, like I remember him wearing that in college, and so really big on found material and repurposing in these large scale collages, which I think really adds a texture and a depth that makes them very sculptural and just way more than like a two-dimensional collage could be.
When you look at that space, and it is just a wonderful space at the Bronx River Art Center, and you've done this work, and by the way, this will be up through Saturday, so folks can still go out and see it at the Bronx River Art Center.
Mm.
Do you now all of a sudden you look at that room, and then in your mind you say, "Hey, I ought to do a show about this." Like, do you have I like, are the wheels spinning already about what's next? Whoops, excuse me there. About what's next?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm looking forward to whatever lands next. I want to make sure I have the time and research to think of a show rather than just do a show because I'm running off the high of this one. I still want it to be a really quality and thoughtful show in the way that I was working on the show for about a year. And so I value the time to work on a show.
Well, when you in a way, also, I'd relate it to this. It's like TV, I put something out, you don't really see the people watching it and then
Yeah.
reacting, but you get a chance to see people reacted, people loved it. I'm sure they did love it. I loved it. When I
Yeah.
went there, I thought it was just an engaging, especially as a Bronxite, an engaging show.
Absolutely, and something that was really great about the location of the show is since both artists are from the Bronx and went to school, at Yale and Boston, this is the first time that or not the first time, but like a really special time that their families and friends and people in the community can see work about the community, which I thought was the really sweet part about making the show.
That to me also, and I alluded to it in the images that we saw. To me, those were Bronx images. These are Bronx people. These are Bronx scenes, and portrayed in a way, of course, that helped to expand our minds. As far as Estelle and Oscar, it's pretty interesting. On one hand, you knew Oscar for years, and Estelle for days or weeks, or and yet you had, I guess, an artist's luck that they were on the same page, right? I mean,
Yeah.
that can't possibly happen all that often.
I feel really lucky about it. It was something really about divine about the timing. We were all finishing our master's degrees at that time and
Right.
just haven't been home for a long time, that this felt like a homecoming show for all of
Wow,
us.
for all of you. Maybe you could just, before we wrap it up, talk a little bit about the importance of art in the borough of the Bronx, and why, not only is this really interesting and creative and beautiful artwork, but why it's important that, the Bronx River Art Center does what it does, and that you and we all have the opportunity to express it.
Absolutely. I think out of all my interests, community is at the center of my practice. I think it's really important, and something that I really wanted to see more growing up is art valued in a community, and but art being reflected of the community as well. And so I think a show like this and a location like BRAC really shows the community, like, one, you can see yourself in this, and two, you're just as important and you're just as valuable than the next person. And yeah, the arts are just really important, and we have to just keep that alive and well. And I think the Bronx River Art Center is just a great place to do that.
Yeah, I see the mothers and fathers too, of course, and bringing kids in who go to classes, and the kids just can't get enough. They go in there; it's a chance to express themselves. Anyway, Jordan Horton, thank you so much for your excellent work
Thank
at
you.
the Bronx River Art Center. You want to share with us what's next? What are you working? What's gestating in your head at this particular time?
I don't have anything to report that's next,
Oh,
but
right.
I'll continue to stay in the art world, continue to write and make shows that I look forward to the next one.
Yeah, well, of course, we have wonderful artists in the borough of the Bronx, and we hope you get a chance to work with all of them. One of
I
them
hope so.
painted the background there here.
Oh,
That's
nice.
that's Olaf Avenue by Bronx artist Danny Halbert.
Oh, wow.
Anyway, Jordan, thank you so much.
Thank
Say
you.
hello to Gail and send her our regards. And ladies and gentlemen, the Bronx River Art Center. The show is Pick Me Up, Put Me On, and it is there through this Saturday. And Jordan, thanks for doing it. We appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Okay, folks, that will do it for the Bronx Buzz. Thanks to Aliya, and thanks to Jordan. And you know what we always say: if the curtain don't fall, the creek don't rise. I'll be back next week. We'll see you then. Good night.